Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music, and today I want to talk about harmonizing melody and not just, ordinary harmonization of melody, not just chord loop or even just diatonic chords. There's a special sort of harmonization we use in epic music, in game scoring, in theater music that calls for a slightly different perspective on those melodic tones. I've written a little melody. We're going to dig into it today. We were just talking about slash chords. That's when the composer gets very specific about the bass note. The slash chord discussion led to somebody going like, well, what about a chord symbol that shows the top note of the chord? Well, of course, the way we experience music, the top note of the chord is very often experienced as the melody. So I thought we'd work from the melody down today. I've written a simple little melody. We'll pick it apart in a moment. But first, let's listen to the sort of final end product. Now, if you look at the screen, you can look over on the right-hand side to my notes, and you can see a normal chord progression, the first harmonization I did, and then the second harmonization I did, which uses some epic chord tricks. Here's the sound of that spread out with strings and orchestra. Well, just let's listen to it. Uplift, right? Tons of uplift. All right, let's go back to the beginning and just take a look at what makes this thing tick. Here's my melody. It's a simple melody in D minor, maybe F major. Starts with a leap and right down the chord. Feels like it ends on a progressive cadence or incomplete sort of sound. So my first thought was to use very simple diatonic chords, and you can see it on the top on the right in yellow. I love that chord progression right there. D minor, C, F, B flat. And of course, that's a version of the axis chords. G minor, F, C, that's my progressive cadence. Then we go back to where we started. Not even a dominant 5 chord, a minor 7, 5 chord, back home to 1. And I've voiced it really simply here. You can see closed voicings that just support that melody. This is what it sounds like. So how did I arrive at that? The first leap really implies a D minor chord. And then I want to head to F, so C is the obvious next choice. And then that descent along the D minor triad has a couple of notes from the F triad in it. So, melodic tones, they're sort of like most sensible when they're the root, third, fifth, maybe seventh, maybe ninth of a triad. And diatonic triads are sort of where I'm going to begin. So D minor, F, right? And that sort of overall sound just led me to the B flat. Despite the fact that the melody's a little bit strange with the B flat chord here. Let's take a look at just that moment. You can see it. Here's my B flat moment, and the melody's going to land on a D and then make a leap up to a C. There's something about the ninth on the B flat chord, which is really kind of satisfying and beautiful, somehow acceptable. The B flat gives way to G minor because B flat is the third of G minor. I mean, no big surprises here. The melodic tone is F, A, so the chord is F and A. The melodic tone is G, the fifth of a C chord. I've chosen chords whose important factors, root, third, fifth, are the melodic tones. And there's just something about melodies that very often will just lead you right to chords. Well, it's not very epic, though. It has a kind of a folk music feeling. And so we want to try to reharmonize it. And that's what I've done. Now, when you're trying to epically reharmonize something, you're going to be making choices that are a little outside the diatonic system. And the way I go about doing that is I ask myself, okay, if that melodic tone was not the root, third, or fifth, but rather the seventh or ninth, what would be happening? So my first impulse is to ask myself, how can I create more color by using the same melody and injecting a chord underneath it that gives it a little more color? So in my epic harmonization, B flat major harmonizes the opening leap, D to A, where the A is the major seventh. It's a really beautiful sound. And then I went to C because it just made a lot of sense. Now, the next passage is an interesting one because the melody descends A, F, D. And what I did was I wrote triads under each of those melodic tones to make that melodic tone the ninth. So an A, the chord is G. Oh, it's beautiful. F, the chord is E flat. D, the chord is C. So you get add two or ninths on all of them. It's a beautiful, epic sound. And since I had ninths, F2, E flat, C sus, this second, the F and the G, features in each of those chords. There's something really beautiful about that. So far, I've made it to this moment here. Let's listen to it in the simplest sort of chord melody version. Very jazzy, that moment. And you hear how the sort of seconds and the suspensions create an open sound? Well, going on, I wanted something even more expansive. And so I have a harmonization, you can see it over here, that says D major 7, B flat major 7, E flat major 7. And this sound is airy and transparent. The major sevens, same melody. And instead of resolving to D, I resolve to an open G. And that D in the melody with the G chord, even over the B as I'm playing it now, is so kind of light and transparent and kind of uplifting. It's a major chord instead of a minor, but we've created a series of chords here that follow a couple of sort of tricky rules of reharmonization. I've picked out chords whose factors are not necessarily the root, the third, and the fifth. And in doing so, I've created chromatic mediant substitutions for my first harmonization. Well, once you've got a harmonization sketched out on keyboard or maybe on guitar, then the question becomes, how can I hand out parts to strings, winds, horns, etc.? So let's take a quick look at what I've done with those instruments. Well, just as you listen to it again, and we heard it right at the top of the video, notice how the winds and brass take the melody at first with supported sordino strings, and I've spread out the strings to open voicings. There's a low bass note from pigments, and then there's a piano kind of chinging away on the top. Hear how that gives it a little bit of bell-like sort of transparency. You may have noticed the sustaining high violin 1 at the top, and you may have noticed that the winds are playing a high harmony to the melody. It starts unison and then splits to a harmony. Gives us a kind of a elegant quality. And then with the major 7, I'm allowing myself some pretty strong inner dissonances. Parallel thirds, parallel sixths. I'm trying to avoid parallel fifths, but I'll allow myself octaves, creating an expansive, open, major sound that is bright. Epic sort of chord changes tend to be moving in with roots and thirds, and they often surprise us. We borrow chords from parallel majors and minors in order to create that moment of kind of like scintillating excitement. And frequently, it will look like the roots are exchanged by a third, chromatic mediant modulation. The rule here has always been serve the melody, and the melody never changed. Each of these examples we looked at, the melody was the king and never changed. It was always a simple diatonic melody in D, natural minor. But it really sounds different when you put a D major chord under that D and A, doesn't it? Well, it's very interesting to me what's possible. And it was worth looking at this morning. I had this excitement when I woke up this morning about like trying to do something like this, and I entered into it going like, what can it possibly be? And I didn't know, and I worked on it for a little bit, and this is what came out. I began with the seed of an idea, and I went into the sort of like harmonic jungle and hacked around a little bit, and this is what came out. Now, I hope it's been useful. Like and subscribe and ding the bell. You'll be notified when I do my videos. I'll see you next time.